Boker Tov. Boker Tov. Before other parts of the program continue, I'd like to share with you a few words of introduction. We are happy to welcome Linda Pinsky's aunt, uncle. Another aunt is going to come soon. Spouses, Professor Zilcha, who was taught many years in Michlala. His wife will speak to you shortly about Linda. This day, this Yom Yom that we have yearly for many years, is trying to remember how many years it is. How many years? Do you remember? Is it 25 years, perhaps? Maybe 20. Maybe 25 years or so. Last year was 25. This is the 26th Yom Yom after Linda's parents dedicated the Machal program in her memory. And besides the learning that's going to take place today, which is important learning, important people, talking about significant aspects that are important here whenever we hear them, the fact that we're gathered today as this Yom Yom has its own particular importance. Today isn't Linda's Yortzeit, tomorrow's the Yortzeit. It's because tomorrow's Friday, so we make it a day early. You all know, because you see it in your Sidurim, and perhaps some of you say it, that Chachmei HaKabbalah, particularly from Talmidei HaAri HaKadosh, assigned to each week and to each day of Sfiras HaOmer a special midah. Because the nature, say, the Svarim of going from Pesach to Shavuos is the change from those who are Avadim, who didn't have their humanity realized, to stand before HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be Mekabel the Torah. And to signify that event, the menachot that are brought at the beginning of the Omer and at the end of the Omer are significantly different. Because the Omer, the mincha that's brought at the beginning of the Omer is Sa'orim, is barley, Ma'achal Behima. And that which is brought on Shavuos, Shtei HaLechem, is Chita Ma'achal Ben Adam. And the process of going from one for whom the Torah assigns Ma'achal Behima to the process of having Ma'achal Adam is a long process. The nature of the Hashgacha Pratis 3,300 years ago was, I guess, that it could be done in 7 weeks. It can't be done in 7 weeks anymore. I don't know if it'll be done in 7 years or 70 years or 120 years. But the process itself is an important process of building oneself up. And thus the Talmidei HaAri Hazal assigned to each of the weeks Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus, a special midah to accomplish in that time and to work on it. But not that the midah itself is a weekly part that exists in a vacuum, but each midah is intertwined with every other midah, because after all, every midah that we have, every attribute that we have, is not a separate identifiable thing. It's all part of whom we are as a person. They're just different aspects of whom we are. And thus every day during that week has its own nature. So the first day of the week, not Sunday, the first day of the week, whenever that Sphira week begins, is a day of it's Chesed, and the second day is Gevura, the third day is Tiferet, etc. So you have combinations beginning with Chesed Shebe Chesed on the first day, and Malchus Shebe Malchus on the last day, and all the intervening days have the various combinations that exist. Tomorrow, which is the 16th of Iyar, which is Linda Alea Shalom's Yortzeit, is Tiferes Sheba Hod. I want to talk about that for a moment. Hod is a Kohen Gadol. Hod is a Kohen Gadol. He represents the majesty of the Shekhinah that says V'shachanti b'socham, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu dwells among you. And he's the one who is to bring that connection of the Shekhinah to us in a very palpable way in the Beis HaMikdash. That's the nature of Hod. But the nature of Hod of the Kohen Gadol is also found in the Pasuk. He wears clothes which are called the Chavod L'Sifares. Tiferes is a special midah that belongs uniquely to the Kohen. Now you might say Tiferes means the beauty. He wears unique clothing, and they must be wonderful things to see that Shani's care. We see models of them all the time, but when they're on the real person, B'meir of Yameinu will be able to appreciate them even more. But that's only an outer beauty. And that's why he says l'chavod l'tiferes, because kavod isn't anything outer. Kavod is always something on the inside. It talks about an internal weight, kaved, kavod, an internal weight, an internal presence that somebody has, a meaning that someone has. So the tiferet that the Torah talks about in terms of the Kohen Gadol is not a tiferet on the outside, as good looking as a Kohen Gadol may have been or may not have been. It's talking about an inner beauty. And how are we taught to understand what that inner beauty is? So the explanation that the Svarim bring is that Tiferes, which comes after Chesed and Gevura, is a unique combination of both of those midos. Chesed is wonderful, Gevura is important, but when they exist by themselves, each one might be skewed in one direction or another direction. Chesed and Gevura have to find the perfect symmetry and the perfect balance to belong together. That's their nature that will bring them their beauty. Because Chesed is a wonderful thing. But a person has to know that there's halachic boundaries of Chesed. What do you do, and for whom, and how much, and when? Many of us know there's a halacha that how much tzedakah a person can give. So they themselves don't overdo it, and therefore be needy and required to be recipients of tzedakah themselves. Gevura, Ezeu Gibor HaKovesh Yisro, as we all know. But sometimes the person's identity has to develop as well. One has to know when to be a Kovesh, and one has to know when to be a Meshachrer, to be free things. And thus, the two together, if they exist by themselves, they're very nice and they're very admirable, but they can go to one way or the other way and not be exactly appropriate, and sometimes be far more than exactly inappropriate. Comes Tiferes and it melds them together, that the perfect balance is there. And what's that perfect balance? Chesed, which is doing good. And Gevura is from refraining from what's not doing good. And maybe when we talk about doing good and refraining, that reminds us a pasuk that we all know, Sur Meirah, Vasei Tov. Except, Sur Meirah is not Chesed. What is it? It's a Gevura. Asay Tov is a Chesed. So if the pasuk says Sur Meirah B'Asay Tov, wouldn't I think that Gevura should precede Chesed? Shouldn't that be the appropriate order? So I'll explain to you what I understand. If the midah that we begin with is a midah of Gevura, and I learn to say no too quickly, I don't know if I'm saying no because it's something inappropriate, or just because I have a habit of saying no, which isn't nice at all. Think for yourselves a little bit when you're in places where a lot of people come and they ask for tzedakah. Some of you might give a lot, some of you might not give a lot. But for the times that you say no, you have to ask yourself the questions. Am I saying no for the right reason? Or am I saying no for the wrong reason? If I give the half shekel or the shekel, is it going to make a difference in my life? Or do I have something against? Why are they asking for money? They shouldn't ask for money. Why don't they get a job? All sorts of things that there's a medrash that says, I think in next week's parsha, shouldn't say that, why don't they do it? Because we don't want HaKadosh Baruch Hu to look at us unfavorably if we look at other people unfavorably. So Gevura that would come first is hard to measure if it's an emes Gevura, because you're saying no for the right reasons, or you've never gotten out of the terrible twos when you just say no because it's a nice word to say to show your own independence, but it has no moral value, no mitzvah value, no Torah value whatsoever. Saying yes first, and then knowing when to stop the yes, that becomes an identifiable midah, because my natural tendency is to say yes, and then I have to learn how to limit myself in an appropriate way. That's Tiferes, that's the beauty. And we all know that the Mishnah says, Ezer Derech Yavor Lo Adam, says Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the one who gave us all of Torah Sheba'al Peh and the Mishnayos that we have. What do we have? That which is Tiferes. It's personally appropriate. It's appropriate that other people see it. If it's personally appropriate, Then it's Meichalos Halvavos, Klapi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Bein Adam Chaveiro. What did the Kohen Gadol do? The Kohen Gadol was the person who brought shalom between Am Yisrael and Avinu Shebashamayim. See what it says about the Mizbeach. The Mizbeach brings shalom, and therefore a cherev, a sword, an instrument of war can't be used upon it. Read what Rashi says in Chumash about Zevach Shalomim. She'll say shalom ben Am Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Avim Shebashamayim. That's the Tiferet. The inner beauty is when we have our midos measured appropriately. And when we are here marking a yard site that takes place on this unique combination of Tiferet Shebahod, not just a regular beauty that has a regular symmetry, but one that is associated with the Kohen Gadol of a connection between HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Am Yisrael. To find the perfection of that relationship that we strive for, but how often do we say that we're not successful in reaching it? And what a wonderful thing that is, that through your learning, through being in Michala, through being in Machal, to knowing the obligations of Torah, when to say yes, and when the Torah says when to say no, that there's mitzvahs aseh and mitzvahs lo saseh, and there's hashkafas HaTorah that gives us direction, and we don't have another direction. The Baruch Hashem, we have people to go to help to give us that direction. What a wonderful fulfillment of that Tiferet Shebahod of Linda Pinsky Aleh Shalom that you're able to fulfill. When her parents decided 26, 27 years ago to dedicate the Machal program in her memory after she was a student in the program a number of years earlier, before I was in Michla, before anyone here Zoche to know her, they must have seen that in her personality, that she had this type of perfection and this goodness and goodness of heart. And they wanted to perpetuate that with you. And not just with you, with the thousands of Machal students who've been here since the program's been dedicated, and will continue Bezrat Hashem forward. So, you are to be Tiferet Shebahod. You are supposed to strive for that perfect balance that exists. Chesed and Gevura. The perfect balance is an ideal. But the more that we go for that perfect balance, the more we're fulfilling our own personal destiny, and the more you're learning in your behavior and your actions, not just this year, not just Machal Tafshinayin Zion, but in the future as well, the lives that you will have, all perpetuate the memory of a wonderful young woman who we're about to hear about. So it's a day of, tomorrow is a day of Tiferet Shebahod, and it's in our consciousness. We know to prepare for it, we know to strive for it. We thank parents who dedicated this program, who gave you opportunities that otherwise you wouldn't have had, to that personal growth and to Torah growth that you're part of here in Michala. So we're glad that we have this Yom Yun, and now we're happy to call her aunt, Mrs. Esther Zilcha, please, who'll share with us some words about Linda's memory.